His mother hadn't called in 32 years. Not once, not a birthday, not a Christmas. Not when he was sleeping on friends' couches with nothing to his name, not when he got married, not when his kids were born, not a single word in over 3 decades. But she called now, and when she did, she didn't open with an apology. She didn't start with "I'm so sorry." She called to tell him his father had died, and then, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned that she'd already told the entire extended family he was coming to the funeral. He hadn't agreed to anything. He'd barely stayed on the phone long enough to hear her out. The same woman who handed him a plastic bag full of clothes on his 18th birthday and told him to leave because he would never amount to anything. That woman had spent the last several days telling cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends that she couldn't wait to see her boy. What she didn't know, what she couldn't even fathom, was that the boy she threw away had built exactly the life she said was impossible. A career, a home, a wife who actually loved him, 2 kids who knew what a real family looked like. And in less than 48 hours, she was about to find out exactly how wrong she'd been about all of it. This isn't just a story about a broken family. This is a story about what happens when a woman spends 32 years rewriting history, and the one person she edited out of the story finally picks up the phone. Let me take you back to where this really begins. A wide, still shot of a hospital nursery in the early 1970s, 2 cribs positioned side by side under cold fluorescent lighting. One crib is surrounded by quiet warmth and small activity, the other sits slightly apart, a small figure under delicate medical equipment, isolated in the clinical brightness. The shot is framed from outside a large observation window, the glass creating emotional distance. Cold, institutional light. The mood is sorrowful and quiet, 2 babies, 2 completely different worlds already forming. 16, 9 widescreen landscape, cinematic realism, grounded drama. You want specifics, because he had them. Memorized the way children memorize the things that cut them deepest. Every birthday he would ask for something. Nothing outrageous, he was a kid growing up in the 80s, and all he wanted were the things other kids had. One year it was a boombox, not a big one, just a small one. The kind every kid on the block was walking around with, the kind that made you feel like you belonged somewhere. His brother got the boombox. Christmas came around and he asked for a remote-controlled car. He'd been thinking about it for months. He probably had the whole plan for it, where he'd drive it, what he'd do, how great it was going to be. He was told they didn't have the money right now. Wait until after the new year. The new year came and went. The remote-controlled car never arrived. His brother spent Christmas morning tearing into toys while he unwrapped clothes. Just clothes. Year after year, the same equation played out in front of him. His twin existed in a world where he was celebrated and rewarded and seen. He existed in the same house, at the same table, in the same supposed family, and somehow wasn't part of any of it. And then came 6th grade. He worked. He actually put in the effort. He'd struggled his entire life with dyslexia, with reading, with all the ways the school system wasn't built for a brain like his. But that year, he pushed. He focused. He stayed up late. He earned straight BS across the board. For a kid with dyslexia fighting through every assignment, that wasn't just good, that was remarkable. He went to his parents with that report card. Their response, "Oh nice, your brother got all A's," that was the whole response. Not "we're proud of you," not "that took real work." Just a quiet, casual reminder that somewhere in the same house, someone else did it better. You know that moment, the one where everything clicks into place, where the thing you've been half understanding your whole life suddenly becomes completely, undeniably clear. For him, it happened standing there with that report card, watching his parents' eyes slide right past his effort to talk about his brother, and something crystallized. He wasn't a son. He was a liability, a problem they had to manage, a roommate they hadn't chosen and couldn't quite figure out what to do with. He was 12 years old and he already knew it. Now, what do kids do with that kind of realization? Some of them shut down. Some of them become very quiet and carry that weight silently for the rest of their lives, letting it flatten them from the inside out. He did something different. He made a calculation, the kind only a kid in an impossible situation would think to make. If positive attention wasn't coming, then he'd get attention the other way. He started acting out. Not maliciously, not in ways that were designed to harm, but in the way that desperate kids do when they've figured out that being invisible is worse than being in trouble. He got into fights at school, mostly because other kids would pick at him, sensing something, and he'd push back. He made problems. He made noise. He forced people to look at him. And here's the darkest part of that math, it worked. Sort of. At least someone was paying attention. But even that wasn't enough to change the fundamental equation at home. He was still the difficult one, the troubled one, the angry one, the one who was probably going to end up nowhere. His brother, of course, was going to be somebody. He spent years trying to prove that wrong, before he finally understood something that most adults spend their whole lives learning the hard way. Proving anything to people who have already decided about you isn't just impossible. It's a trap. Surviving them was the only goal worth having. And then the moment came that he'd probably seen coming for years. He turned 18. He graduated high school, which, honestly, given everything he was fighting through, was its own quiet miracle. He'd made it. Against the dyslexia, against the neglect, against the daily message that he wasn't worth investing in. He had crossed the finish line. And on the day after graduation, he came downstairs to find his mother waiting at the front door. She had a bag for him. Not a going-away party. Not a proud conversation about what came next. Not even a simple "we're going to miss you." Just a bag, his clothes, packed up for him, and a message delivered without apology or ceremony. Time to go. She told him he'd been taken care of. He'd graduated. They had done their job. Now he needed to leave. He asked about his brother. His brother was still living at home. His brother was going to college. His brother, they said, was going to be somebody. Him, he had struggled in school. He clearly didn't have a future worth investing in. He was probably going to be a bum. Sit with that for a second. This is his mother, telling her 18-year-old son, on what should have been one of the most celebrated days of his young life, that he was going to amount to nothing and needed to get out. But here's the part that tells you everything you need to know about who he was, even then, even at 18. He grabbed the bag. His mother, in what he later recognized as a classic performance for her own benefit, moved in to hug him on his way out. Some last-minute display of maternal feeling she apparently needed to have witnessed. He stepped around her, walked out the front door, never looked back. Not because he wasn't hurt. He was, but because he already knew. He'd known for years. He'd been mourning this family long before he had a reason to walk away from them. They just finally made it official. Here's where the story turns. Because what his family had predicted, the bum, the failure, the liability, that's not what happened. Not even close. He hit the world at 18 with nothing. No savings, no plan, nowhere to sleep that was truly his. He couch-surfed with friends, pieced things together one day at a time, and slowly, painfully, stubbornly slowly, started building something out of absolutely nothing. He got a job at a gas station, and that's where the first genuinely good thing happened to him. He met her. They clicked immediately. He doesn't go deep into the details of how it happened, just that when you know, and he knew. A few years later, they got married. And somewhere in those years of building a life from scratch, he figured out how to do the one thing his family of origin had never managed. He learned how to actually show up for people, how to be present, how to love someone without conditions attached. By 2005, they had a daughter. 2 years later, a son. They built a home, not just a structure, but an actual home with warmth in it. The kind where kids know they are loved, where effort gets celebrated, where no one compares a child against their sibling and finds them lacking. He built a career in IT, worked his way up through pure competence and persistence, and the kind of grit that only develops when you've had to fight for every single thing you have. At 50 years old, his life looked exactly like what his family had told him was impossible. Great career, great wife, great kids, a home that was genuinely his, real financial stability, real peace, and zero contact with the people who had bet against him. As far as he was concerned, that silence was the win. That was the whole story, until his phone rang. He was deep into a 12-hour shift when his phone lit up with an unknown number. He almost let it go. But he answered. And on the other end of the line was a voice he hadn't heard in 32 years, his mother. She told him his father had passed away. She told him the family hoped he could make it to the funeral, that they missed him, that they'd like to be a part of his life again. He told her he was busy. He'd think about it. He hung up. He stood there for a moment, probably trying to process the sheer audacity of what had just happened. A woman he hadn't received a single word from in over 3 decades had just called him to say they missed him. As if missing someone is a thing you get to claim after 32 years of deliberate silence. As if the missing counts when you're the one who chose the distance. He told his wife when he got home. Now, I want you to understand this part, because it matters for the full picture. His wife is a genuinely good person. Her heart is always in the right place. She comes from a big family, the real kind, the kind that shows up, that celebrates and supports and means what they say when they say, "I love you." Family, to her, isn't just a word. It's something worth fighting for, worth extending grace toward, worth another chance even when it's hard. So when he told her what happened, she gently suggested he might want to go. His mother had reached out, his father had died. Maybe they felt remorse. Maybe they genuinely wanted to make something right. It would be the decent thing to do. He listened. He didn't argue, but something about it didn't sit right. Because the people who raised him weren't the kind of people who changed. Were they? He did what a lot of us do when we need perspective from outside our own heads. He posted on Reddit. He laid out the whole thing. The childhood, the neglect, the favoritism. The boom box his brother got. The Christmas where he unwrapped clothes while his twin tore into toys. The report card with the BS that earned him a reminder that his brother got as. The bag of clothes at 18. The 32 years of nothing. All of it in detail, honest and unflinching. The internet, in this particular case, was remarkably clear. Comment after comment said the same thing in different ways. Don't go. She doesn't miss you, she needs something. People who actually miss you don't wait 32 years to pick up the phone. The only thing that changes when a narcissist reaches out after decades of silence is the value of whatever they are after. Block the number and live your life. He read every single comment. 750 of them. He sat there and he read all of them. And then he did something that surprised even him. He sat down with his wife and went through the comments together. Not to win an argument, not to prove her wrong, but so she could hear, from hundreds of strangers who had nothing to gain from their opinion, what he had known instinctively about the family he came from. She got it. She actually got it. She apologized for overstepping. He told her there was nothing to apologize for, her heart was in the right place, and that was exactly the kind of woman he needed beside him. But one comment stopped him cold. Someone suggested he reach out to his brother before making any final decision. Not for a reconciliation, not for anything deep. Just because the brother might know something he didn't. So he picked up the phone. And that one call, that single conversation, is where this story stops being about a painful childhood and starts being about something else entirely. That's where the karma actually arrives. His brother picked up. He got right to it. Did you give Mom my number? Yes, he had. His brother had thought it would be better for him to hear about their father's death from their mother than from him. A reasonable enough call on the surface. He wasn't a bad guy, he'd never been a bad guy. They just walked different paths for 3 decades. But then he asked the real question. He asked why his brother thought he would even want to hear from someone who'd kicked him out at 18 and never said a single word to him in 32 years. His brother went quiet, and then he said something that reframed the entire story. He said, "Mom told me you could have stayed. She said she offered you the option to pay rent, but you refused and left on your own." Read that back. Sit with it. The woman who had handed her teenage son a garbage bag full of clothes and told him to get out because he would never be anything, that woman had been telling the family a completely different story. She had been telling them he was given options, that there were conditions offered in good faith, that he had chosen to walk away like an ungrateful kid who didn't want to contribute. She had spent 32 years making herself the reasonable one. The detail about the rent is what really gets you. It's so specific, so deliberate. It's the kind of detail a skilled liar adds to make their version feel credible, because he just left is hard to defend, but he refused to pay rent like an adult makes her sound like she was simply teaching him responsibility. 32 years. She had been carrying that lie for 32 years, telling it to family, to anyone who asked, slowly building a version of events where she did nothing wrong and he chose this distance. He wasn't even surprised. He told his brother exactly that. This is who she was then. This is still who she is. The only story she was ever going to tell was the one where she did nothing wrong. The question was just, what else had she been doing in the meantime? Here's what else. He asked his brother the obvious next question. Why was their mother so desperate to have him at the funeral? Why now? Why, after 32 years of absolute silence, did she suddenly need him in that room? And his brother, to his genuine credit, told him the truth. Their parents had spent their entire lives performing wealth they didn't have, keeping up appearances, living like the people they wanted to be seen as rather than who they actually were. And now that his father was gone, now that the performance of a lifetime was over, reality had quietly caught up with all of it. His mother had nothing. No savings, no assets, nothing set aside. She was living in a small trailer, surviving on a modest monthly social security check and a small slice of his father's pension. That was it. That was the sum total of a lifetime of prioritizing image over substance. somewhere along the way, she had found out that the son she'd written off at 18 had actually made something of himself. A career, a real home, a family, financial stability, real, actual money, and she had started talking about him at the funeral. She had been telling relatives she couldn't wait to see him. She had mentioned that she hoped he'd bring the kids so she could meet her grandchildren. The children she had no hand in creating, raising, or acknowledging for the entirety of their lives. The children who had grown up surrounded by their mother's big, warm, loving family and had never once needed her. And then, this is the part that genuinely floored him, she had apparently told his brother that she expected him to come. Not hoped. Expected. She had made plans around his attendance. She had structured the whole narrative of that funeral around a son who had not agreed to a single thing. Because that is what these people do. They write a version of events where they are the center, where they are owed something, where everyone else is simply a supporting character who shows up when needed. 32 years later, she still needed a supporting character. She just thought it was going to be him. He took a breath, and then he told his brother very calmly and very clearly, "I'm not going." No dramatic speech, no long list of grievances, no attempt to make anyone feel guilty or ashamed. Just the truth, delivered cleanly, "I'm not going." He had already mourned these people. He had done that grieving a long time ago, as a teenager standing in a doorway with a garbage bag full of clothes, looking at a closed front door and understanding that this was what they thought of him. He had processed the loss of this family long before any of them were technically gone. His father's death was the death of a stranger, someone who shared his DNA but not a single meaningful moment of his adult life. He felt sadness in the abstract way we feel sadness about strangers, and that was honest, and that was enough. He told his brother that if anyone at the funeral asked why he wasn't there, he could tell them the truth or he could tell them whatever made things easier. He genuinely did not care. The opinions of people who hadn't thought about him in 32 years didn't move him. He was beyond the reach of their judgment. He told his brother something else, too. Keep in touch, not as a tearful reconciliation, not as some dramatic reclaiming of a twin bond that was taken from them as children. Just two people who had survived the same household, come out the other side without hating each other, and deserved to actually know each other beyond Christmas cards. His brother wasn't a bad man. He had never been. He'd been a kid in an impossible situation, and that wasn't his fault either. They agreed to actually talk, and then he hung up, sat down with his wife, and together they made the final call. His mother's number was getting blocked, not in anger, not in bitterness, in simple, clear-eyed self-preservation. He had worked his entire life, every rung of the IT career, every payment on the house, every year of showing up for his kids, to build something real. He was not going to hand any piece of that to a woman who had decided he was worthless at 18 and only revised that opinion when she needed something from him. He was going to mourn his father privately, on his own terms, in his own time. And then he was going to go home to the family he had built, and that was going to be the end of it. Here is what the story of this man teaches us about karma. It doesn't always arrive in a dramatic confrontation. There's no final scene where the villain breaks down, confesses everything, and weeps at what they've done. Real karma, the quiet, grinding, earned kind, doesn't work that way, and somehow, because of that, it lands harder. His mother spent 32 years maintaining a fiction. She told anyone who asked that her son had chosen to leave, that he'd been offered options, that he was the one who walked away from an opportunity she generously provided. She lived inside that lie. She built her entire identity around being the wronged party, the misunderstood mother, the woman who tried. And in the end, she was broke, living in a trailer, surviving on a social security check and a pension fraction, having spent a lifetime keeping up appearances while saving nothing, building nothing, investing in nothing real. Meanwhile, the son she called a future bum on his way out the door at 18 was sitting on a career, a home, a marriage, a family, and enough financial stability that she had apparently decided he was her retirement plan. She had assumed he would come. She had announced it to the family without asking. She had built a story around his attendance at that funeral the same way she had built every story in her life, around what she needed, regardless of the truth. He didn't go. He blocked the number. He came home. He sat with his wife and his kids in the house he built for them, and at some point on his own schedule and in his own private way, he said goodbye to a father who had never truly stood up for him, and then he let it all go. He once wrote, in his own words, "I'm not a better person because of them. I'm a better person in spite of them." I worked my ass off to create the family I deserved, and I'll never give credit to anyone but myself. That's not bitterness. That's not anger. That's something much rarer and much harder to earn. That's clarity. Cold, clean, 32 years in the making clarity. If this story moved something in you, if you've ever had to choose between the family you were born into and the life you actually built, drop a like and hit subscribe. New karma stories land here every single day. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.